Tonight, the final countdown. Kamala Harris hosts a star-studded rally in Philadelphia, while Donald Trump storms through the swing states. And how both candidates would make history by becoming the next president of the United States. Hello, I'm Jeremy Fernandez. This is ABC News. The Reserve Bank again keeps interest rates on hold, saying they need to remain sufficiently restrictive. And what a night! An absolute outsider rides to victory at the Melbourne Cup. They've crisscrossed the country dozens of times, but for Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, the closing hours of the campaign played out in very different ways. Trump continued his blitz through the swing states, raising concerns about the legitimacy of the election process, while thousands of Harris supporters gathered in Philadelphia for a star-laden rally as the Democrat candidate placed her final focus on an optimistic message. Our reporters have been following every step of the final days of the race. We begin tonight's coverage with North America correspondent Barbara Miller in the must-win state of Pennsylvania.
Close to midnight on the eve of America's election, one final pitch to voters.
Just one more day in the most consequential election of our lifetime, and the momentum is on our side.
Addressing supporters from the place made famous by the 1970s movie Rocky.
Here at these famous steps, a tribute to those who start as the underdog and climb to victory.
In a sign of just how important Pennsylvania is, Harris spent the whole day in the state.
Let's get this done.
Jetting to Philadelphia for her grand finale with some A-list backers.
I cast my vote for someone who will be a president for all.
Every single vote, every one is going to matter. That's why I've come to Philadelphia tonight.
Puerto Rican star Ricky Martin also taking the stage. He endorsed Harris after a comedian at a Trump rally joked his homeland was garbage. The Democratic candidate noticeably didn't name her opponent, but she certainly referenced him.
Turn the page on a decade of politics that has been driven by fear and division.
Do you think she's going to win?
I don't want to say that because I don't want people to think we have it in the bag and not come out and vote. But yes.
I think she's going to win by a landslide.
Really? Philadelphia has seen this kind of rally before. Exactly 8 years ago, it was the setting for another Election Eve campaign event by another Democrat, hoping to become America's first female president.
Pennsylvania, it all happens tomorrow.
Kamala Harris and her supporters hoping this time history will be made. Barbara Miller, ABC News, Philadelphia.
The former president was making his last-ditch attempts to woo undecided voters with a starkly different vision for the country. Donald Trump mostly steered away from prepared remarks as he lobbed insults and a furious tirade against his Democratic opponents.
Kamala, you're fired. Get the hell out. Get the hell out of here.
Donald Trump is on the warpath.
If we get everybody out and vote, there's not a thing they can do.
The former president was also in the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania, making his last-ditch pitch to be the leader of the free world for the second time. In his final rally before the nation decides who will be president, Donald Trump came out swinging.
And I will stop the invasion of criminals coming across our border. I will strengthen our military. I will restore peace in the world. And I will rescue the American dream. But Kamala is, this is known, she's a very low IQ person. And we don't need a low IQ individual. We've had that for 4 years.
Across the United States, the mood for Republicans is confident and combative.
I think Donald Trump's going to have a red wave is what I think.
I watched the hearings from the last 2020 election, and it was blatant fraud. Nothing came of it. But I think we're ahead of the game this time.
Trump voters out in strength for a final push before voting day. Donald Trump's third presidential campaign ended here in Michigan much like it began. Promises to end wars, improve the cost of living and cast a long shadow of doubt over the legitimacy of one of the world's oldest democracies. Elias Kluwer, ABC News, Grand Rapids.
With the campaigning complete and Election Day soon dawning, America's future is now in the hands of the voting public. North America correspondent Jade McMillan is in Florida.
The opening of polls across the country brings an extraordinary campaign to a close. Both candidates are retreating to familiar territory for Election Day. The Vice President will return to her old university in Washington, D.C., while the former president will be here at his home in Florida's West Palm Beach. Regardless of the outcome, it will be historic. Kamala Harris would become America's first ever female president. Donald Trump only its second to make a comeback after being voted out of the White House. But for many Americans, this is a nerve-wracking moment. 4 years on from the violent aftermath of the last election, security is being stepped up at polling places and counting centres. Authorities preparing for the possibility that the end of a tumultuous campaign could signal the beginning of another divisive period.
And some of the very first votes have now been tallied and reported. I caught up with US election analyst Casey Briggs a short time ago to preview our coverage as the first figures came through.
Tomorrow, it's decision day. American voters will pick their next president. But one town has had a head start. We have the first figures in the state of New Hampshire, specifically from this bit of New Hampshire, a little town called Dixville Notch. And at midnight local time, as it does every 4 years, it was the first place in America to report votes. The result? Kamala Harris 3 votes, Donald Trump 3. A tie. An omen of things to come? Look, obviously we're not going to read too much into that, but we are now off the blocks in the race for the White House. And tomorrow, here in the ABC Election Centre, those 6 votes will become tens of millions. And we'll be here to count them all, along with Jeremy Fernandez.
Casey, our coverage kicks off before sunrise and continues right through the day, culminating in a special edition of ABC News at this time tomorrow night. I'll be co-hosting during the day with Bridget Brennan, plus a panel of experts exploring the key issues, not just for the United States, but also what's at stake for us here in Australia. Every count, every result beamed straight to us in the election centre and straight up onto the big board. Casey, these are the 538 electoral college votes, state by state, in a country that's split right down the middle.
Right down the middle indeed. On the left, all of the electoral college votes that were won by Joe Biden 4 years ago. On the right, those that were won by Donald Trump. And as the votes roll in tomorrow, and as those states start to get called one by one, these bricks in our big board will colour in, and we'll start to get a firmer idea of who'll be the 47th President of the United States.
The Reserve Bank has kept interest rates on hold yet again. The RBA governor says while core inflation is moving towards its target, the central bank still needs more convincing that it's going to stay down.
For these punters at the Melbourne Cup, a lot was riding on the Reserve Bank's interest rate decision.
We've probably had like a 45% increase on our weekly mortgage repayments.
It's a lot harder these days now with everything else going up, you know, food and fuel and all the bills and everything.
Clearing the inflation barrier is no easy feat.
I don't even know who won.
The RBA governor is more focused on tackling underlying inflation and still can't rule out a rate rise.
We do think that there are still some risks on the upside. That's why I say we can't rule anything in or out.
As expected, the Reserve Bank kept the cash rate on hold at 4.35%.
What this means is that rates haven't gone up since last Melbourne Cup day.
We are absolutely at the back of the pack in seeing reduction in interest rates. We've seen them in the US, in the UK, in Canada, New Zealand, Europe, elsewhere. but not in Australia.
While we may be a laggard when it comes to interest rate cuts, rates here are still low compared to other nations like the US and New Zealand. And given the nation's leading economists are not expecting a rate cut by Christmas, borrowers will have to wait until next year for any mortgage relief.
I still think first half of next year it's likely, but we shouldn't be holding our breath for a lot of interest rate cuts in Australia.
I really don't think we can expect any rate relief from the RBA until about May of next year.
The Governor wouldn't be drawn into forward guidance for next year.
We will try to make sure that we're tuned in enough that if things start to turn down more than expected, that we're ready to act, but we don't know.
With rates staying higher for longer, Australians with home loans are being advised to seek out a better deal.
There are 34 different lenders offering at least one variable rate under that 6% mark, so it is well worth looking at the refinancing numbers.
So it pays to switch lenders to minimise the mortgage pain. David Chow, ABC News.
The Irish jockey Robbie Dolan came to Australia to follow a dream to sing, but today he etched his name into racing history, winning the Melbourne Cup on board Knight's Choice. In front of a crowd of 91,000, the 28-year-old outran the highly fancied international contingent to deliver trainer Sheila Laxon her second Cup victory.
A Melbourne Cup winning jockey, it's a moment this Irishman won't forget anytime soon.
Knight's Choice warp speed, they hit the line, it's a photo finish. Knight's Choice, I reckon, is one from warp speed and a photo.
An emphatic win for the Irish singer who might have produced his best hit yet.
Pinch me, I think I'm dreaming. It's incredible. I can't believe it. I don't even know what to say.
Knight's Choice edging out Warp Speed in second and Akita Sushi in third. Most interest was on the international raiders, but with 200 metres to go, Dolan found a gap and Knight's Choice did the rest. Dolan came to Australia from Ireland 8 years ago to chase a music dream as a contestant on The Voice.
So come on, let it go. Just let it be. Why don't you be you and I?
Taking centre stage with his dad, wife and daughter in the crowd, co-trainers John Simons and Sheila Laxon riding every bit of the emotion. Laxon winning her first Cup 23 years ago when she became the first female to win the Caulfield Melbourne Cup double with Ethereal.
Well done. I'm not just a good singer.
Once upon a time, the Flemington feature really was a wild dream. Today, Dolan shared it with 91,000 people, the highest crowd since 2016, who this morning were off and racing. The 164th edition of the Cup, no better excuse to frock up in your Tuesday best.
Racing and fashion are synonymous with each other.
Something different, first time to the Melbourne Cup.
And it wouldn't be the Melbourne Cup without celebrity guests. Four-time Olympic champion Ariane Titmus enjoyed being mostly out of the spotlight.
This is honestly my favourite thing to do when I'm on a break from swimming, and this year I don't actually have to train tomorrow, so I can really enjoy the day.
The day drawing punters from far and wide.
We come from Mount Isa. Just come down to check out the Melbourne Cup.
With Ladies' Day coming earlier than usual, the race featuring a record number of female jockeys and trainers.
To now be able to relax and just watch on and enjoy all the girls that are riding in the Cup today and just all the great racing, it doesn't get much better than this.
The day a success for those who took a chance on the outsider. For the Dolan camp, leaving with extra luggage on a day they'll never forget. Alexia Pesce, ABC News, Melbourne.
The ABC has apologised for multiple errors in a 7:30 investigation aired 2 years ago about allegations of war crimes involving Australian commandos in Afghanistan. The errors include adding the sound of extra gunshots to footage and taking a comment out of context. National Affairs editor Melissa Clark reports.
It's this footage that has been under close scrutiny, used in television and online stories about the conduct of the 2nd Commando Regiment in Helmand Province in 2012. 2 months ago, the Seven Network's Spotlight program raised complaints about the sound of extra gunshots being added in. Today, the national broadcaster offered this apology.
Obviously, this shouldn't have occurred, and we're taking it and have taken it very seriously, and that's why we sincerely regret and apologise those editing errors in the video clips.
The ABC had commissioned its former head of editorial policy to conduct a review. It handed an interim report to a Senate estimates hearing today. On the extra gunshots, it found they were inadvertent rather than deliberate, with no evidence suggesting it was done at the direction of journalists involved. The report dismissed concerns about how the footage had been slowed down and zoomed in, but it upheld a complaint by a former US Drug Enforcement Agency team leader who was interviewed, who felt his general remarks about the need to investigate war crimes allegations were used to refer to the Australian regiment. The report found the comment was taken out of context and used in a way which was potentially misleading.
Was anyone's employment terminated as a result of this?
Senator, I can confirm no one's employment has been terminated.
As Director of News, those publications were referred up to me and I take full responsibility for signing off on those publications.
Whilst not found to be deliberate, altering audio and out-of-context quotes are nonetheless serious editorial failings. It harms the ABC's reputation at a time of growing mistrust in the media. Melissa Clark, ABC News, Canberra.
The family of a boy who was swept out to sea on the Central Coast say they're still holding out hope despite the search for him being suspended. 11-year-old Laith Alade disappeared on Sunday while he was on a fishing trip with his father and brothers. They were trying to cross a channel at the entrance. Emergency crews from several agencies have taken part in the operation to find him. The boy's families issued a statement thanking everyone involved, saying they're deeply moved by all those who have selflessly dedicated their time. The operation was suspended late this afternoon, but regular patrols will continue to look for the boy. A new list of melanoma hotspots has been released and much of the state's north is again at the top of the table. Ballina, Lismore, Byron, Clarence Valley and Coffs Harbour have the highest rates per capita. Sutherland, Port Macquarie Hastings, Tweed, Kempsey and Richmond Valley round out the top 10. The state government's already launched advertising campaigns reminding people about the dangers of sun exposure. It'll now target the worst affected areas in the hope of getting the sun safety message through.
I was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma. It was in my bones and I was quite literally riddled with it. So I'd like to reinforce that you slip, slop, slap and seek shade, and you do it every day, not just on days that you're going to the beach.
Coming up, Sarah Ferguson hosts 7:30 from Washington DC and speaks to the political analyst Chris Steyerwalt.
What crap.
The problem for Trump this time, these Democrats are just mad as hell. They are just mad as hell at Donald Trump, and they are angry about abortion, and they are angry about the situation, and they would eat a glass Coke bottle to go vote.
Spain has now deployed 7,500 soldiers to areas hit by flooding that's left at least 217 people dead and dozens missing. A Navy ship carrying aid and medical supplies arrived in Valencia as recovery efforts and the search for victims continue. Public anger is rising over the government's lack of warnings and slow response to the disaster. The region has requested an aid package of over 50 billion Australian dollars. The Biden administration is stepping up criticism of Israel for not doing enough to improve humanitarian conditions in Gaza as a 30-day deadline looms. The latest Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 16 Palestinians in Gaza. In the northern town of Beit Lahia, residents searched for survivors under the rubble. The UN aid agency UNRWA says Israel is scaling back the number of aid trucks allowed into Gaza. The US State Department says Israel has so far failed to meet the conditions laid out in a letter last month calling for an improvement in aid deliveries.
The situation has not improved sufficiently in the 21, 22 days, whatever it is, since we sent that letter. There is still a week or so to go until we reach the end of the period, but there is much more that we need to see them do.
Let's return now to our coverage of the US presidential election campaign. Residents of Kamala Harris's ancestral village in India's south are eagerly awaiting the outcome. The town has hung banners and posters in her honour, and residents are offering special prayers, willing her to victory.
At this temple in India's south, an extra request is added to the day's prayers.
When Kamala Harris contested the vice presidential election, we all prayed for her and she won. Now she is contesting the presidential election. We all pray for her victory again.
This is Thulacendrapuram, the village where Kamala Harris's maternal grandfather was born. In the eyes of residents here, they see the vice president as a daughter.
It's a pride for our village. She should win.
Her face adorning banners and posters in homes and shops.
Kamala Harris is competing against Trump, but she will win. The chances of her victory are higher. We've been watching the news closely.
And her story being taught in the local school, the same one that her grandfather attended.
She has her roots here, so we are proud. She is a role model for our students, and that's why we want her to win.
Although she's never visited this village, Kamala Harris's name is inscribed in stone, a donation by her aunt to the temple on her behalf. But locals hope if she's victorious, that will change.
She should come here if she wins.
The uncertainty that some Kamala Harris supporters might be feeling right now in the US isn't present here. Thulacendrapuram locals are confident she will win, and they're ready to celebrate.
We'll burst crackers, distribute sweets, and we'll light lamps. That's how we celebrate.
Eagerly awaiting a result from halfway across the world. Ellie Grounds, ABC News, Thulacendrapuram.
To finance now, the Aussie dollar didn't move today when the Reserve Bank announced its decision to leave interest rates on hold, and the local share market followed Wall Street lower. Here's Alan Kohler.
Well, an outsider might have won the Melbourne Cup, but the favourite won the rate cut stakes half an hour earlier. As usual, there were three horses in that race: Cut, Hike and Hold. Cut and Hike threw off their riders at the start and then ran the other way, but it didn't matter because no one had any money on them. All the money was on hold. So the Aussie dollar is steady tonight at 66 US cents. Here's 30 years of the RBA cash rate, and while it's up a long way from 0.1% in 2.5 years, it's only just above average. But of course, the household debt upon which interest is paid is anything but average. In those 40 years, it's gone from 70% of income to 190% of income. The RBA also released its quarterly statement on monetary policy today with its annual confession of forecasting hits and misses. The big miss has been productivity since COVID. The RBA thought it would increase, but it collapsed instead. Big mistake, because as Paul Krugman said, productivity isn't everything, but in the long run, it's almost everything. I would add that that especially applies to its effect on interest rates. On the share market, Domino's Pizza got burnt after announcing that Chief Executive Don Mage will be retiring. Now, he's 55 and he's been working for Domino's for 37 years, so he started at 18 and he became CEO at 33. He listed Domino's in 2005 with a value of $135 million and it's now worth $3 billion, selling pizzas around the globe. The market finished 0.4% lower. Shares fell in New York last night but rose strongly in Japan and China today, and on commodity markets, iron ore, copper and oil all went up between 1% and 2%, while gold eased. And that's finance.
Hundreds of rugby league fans got a glimpse of the Tongan team today ahead of the Pacific Cup final this weekend. Tonga sealed its place to meet the Kangaroos this Sunday after a dramatic victory over New Zealand. 4 matches will be played at Western Sydney Stadium as the Pacific Championships wrap up. Fans from the city's Tongan community gathered in Blacktown this afternoon to cheer for the players at an open training session.
Just to be here, let them know that we're right behind them. We know Australia's #1 in the world, but you never say never.
We're basically just all here together. Like, they're the ones playing and we're here to support. We're just all in the game together, just as one.
A captain's knock by Pat Cummins has helped Australia defeat Pakistan by 2 wickets in the one-day international at the MCG. Chasing 204 for victory, the home team was in control. Josh Inglis and Steve Smith combined for an 85-run partnership. Pakistan took 3 quick wickets and at one point looked like it might take a rare win in Australia. But Cummins steadied the innings with an unbeaten 32 and guided his team to a 1-0 lead in the 3-match series.
Yeah, I think for 3/4 of it, really good. Yeah, just trying to tighten up that, particularly, try and find some partnerships. We always try and play aggressive. Sometimes it's not going to pay off, but I think, there's still room just to try and find a couple of partnerships.
It might not be the race that stops the nation, but it did slow down the tiny Northern Territory town of Berry Springs. The croc races have become a top-end Cup Day tradition, and this year didn't disappoint.
Out of the gates and ready to run. There may not be a thoroughbred in sight, but these young salties have been preparing for their big moment on the Territory's own track.
A really long tail gives them that extra bit of motivation, bit of flick, those strong back legs, and as long as they look nice, fit and healthy.
The event draws punters from near and far in the hopes of picking a winner in Australia's most unique race.
Never seen a crocodile race, so it'd be quite interesting, better than horses.
Well, seeing the crocodile races, because we haven't been here before, we just arrived in Darwin yesterday, so from New South Wales.
Australia is huge. Everything has to be a big deal, and I love it. I simply love it, this place. And I love crocodile.
This year, the croc races are stepping things up a notch with a new addition, camels. These camels aren't taking part in the races, if all goes to plan, but they are rounding out what's been a fantastic day here in Darwin. A day where everyone's a winner. Isabella Tolhurst, ABC News, Darwin.
Let's take a look at the weather now. And Tom, there's a big rain band crossing the United States tonight. What are the chances it might affect the outcome of the election?
Well, Jeremy, in a country where voting is not compulsory and if the margin of victory is tight, the weather has the potential to impact the end result. Studies have found fair weather in 1960 helped push the Democrat JFK over the line, while rain in Florida in 2000 may have secured the presidency for Republican Bush. And the weather in this year's race to the White House could also become a factor, and that's due to this rain band, which is extending from Texas all the way up to Canada. Now, there's clear evidence that rain has a negative impact on turnout. For every 25 millimetres, a 1% reduction in votes. The two swing states under this rain band are Wisconsin and Michigan, where up to 50 millimetres could fall on voting day. Now, the group most likely to skip the booths due to inclement weather are marginal voters. And historically, that's working class Americans. Now, last century, the working class were more likely to vote Democrat. However, over the past decade, they now lean more towards Trump, while the college-educated are favouring Harris. That means in this election, rain could tip the balance slightly in favour of the Democrats. Back home now, and Sydney was mild overnight. A low of 18 was 3 above the average. Cloudy skies then held the high to 24. That was average for the city, while 24 was 2 below average in Parramatta. Last night's minimums were cool in the southwest of the state under clear skies. Wagga Wagga dipped down to 6. The maximums today were as much as 8 above average in the north, a scorching 39 in Moree and 40 in Tibooburra. On the satellite then, well, high cloud is entering the far west of the state, while some storms formed this afternoon over the northeast. This incredible shot just across the border at Boonah. On the chart tomorrow, a trough is approaching from the west, and ahead of it, a northerly airstream will bring the warmest weather in 8 to 9 months over the coming days. Around the country, heating up to 33 in Melbourne tomorrow with the chance of a late storm. Canberra also 33 and the Alice 39. For the northeast, warm and mostly dry, mid-30s in the west. Just a slight chance of showers and thunderstorms. They're most likely on the ranges where severe storms are possible with damaging winds and large hail. For the southeast, warm and mostly sunny, only the odd light shower on the Alps, heading for around 30 on the coast and up to 34 degrees in the west. To the west of the state, mostly sunny and hot tomorrow, climbing above 40 for many areas and up to 44 degrees in the northwest. The odd gusty storm in the afternoon, which could be severe over the southwest. On the waters, 30-knot winds off the south coast, where the seas will climb up to 2.5 metres. For Sydney, partly cloudy and warm, only the slight risk of a shower. Northeasterly winds to 25 kilometres per hour. Temperature range 18 to 27 degrees in the city, a high of 24 in Bondi and up to 33 degrees in Penrith. The sun will rise at 5:49 and set at 7:29. And ahead, well, there's a real taste of summer this week. Warm Thursday, 31 to 36 degrees, with a chance of showers and storms in the afternoon. Staying above 30 on Friday. Then a cooler change by the weekend. There's the chance of showers. They're more likely on the Sunday. Jeremy?
Tom, thank you. Let's take you now to Sarah Ferguson standing by with 7:30 from Washington, D.C.